we've got Professor Shuaibu, who is the governorship candidate of the NNPP in Kwara State. He's a former Vice Chancellor of University of Ilorin and former Executive Chairman of the Federal Character Commission. Good morning, and thank you for joining us today.
Good morning. It's my pleasure to be here.
Well, you are in the governorship race with the NNPP. First of all, why did you decide to throw your hat in the ring at this time?
Thank you very much. By profession, a teacher, and I've taught at all levels. And I've always remained like most Nigerians in my shoes, virtually observers and watchers of the political scene, until I came to the realization that politics is too serious a business to be left to professional politicians alone. There's so much damage that's already been done to our country at every level. And if people of goodwill and who have the wherewithal to attempt a damage control, people like me should actually take an interest, and that's why I'm in politics.
I mean, you're former Vice Chancellor, former Executive Chairman, Federal Character Commission. You've heard people say that politics is dirty. So why did you still go in? Because you could risk losing perhaps your image and integrity.
If all clean people leave it to dirty people, we'll have a dirty nation of dirty people who will make dirty laws which will be obeyed by good people, whether they would like it or not. So if you are going to be a victim in that case, it's only appropriate that good people should also take an interest.
But why NNPP?
NNPP happens to be the party on which platform I intend to contest, because there is a reputation attached to that party, one for the leadership, and by perception of the profile of all persons there. You see, there's this anti-corruption crusade that has been on for Nigeria for a long time in Nigeria. And people of goodwill have always wished Nigeria were going to be governed by straight and upright people. All the parties that we know of that are in control of the political environment in Nigeria today have one thing or the other against them, and that's the stigma of corruption from top to bottom. And if people like me are going to get into politics, we must observe and watch which is the least area of debt that we want to pitch our tent in. And I'm glad to say that everybody from top to bottom in NNPP today are persons who have clean bill of health in terms of corruption. So if you begin by looking at the people who occupy the party, you find that Engineer Rabi Konkoso, the former minister and former governor, is about the only one among all the presidential candidates of note who is not being pursued around by one corruption agency or the other. And I think when I look at it down the line, including myself, I think that's a right and comfortable place to be.
But what makes you think that you have a chance at this? Because, I mean, the preceding parties there, they say they've got the leverage, they refer to the people who they have around them. What makes you think you have a chance at this?
I think it's a question of pedigree, a question of track record. I've been in the public service for quite some time. I've been in high places. And I think if I come into politics, the goodwill that I garnered from my previous experiences are going to stand me in good stead. And that's why I'm there. I have, I think, the confidence, especially of the majority of young people in Kwara State. They have been in my constituency for a long time.
Isn't this a little too late in the day? I mean, because you've said that you realize that politics is too serious a business to be left to, just anybody. But some people will say that, you've spent a good number of your years at the university. You've also had the privilege of going to the Federal Character Commission, where, I mean, I want to believe that you tried your best to make an impact. But, for a state like Kwara, they will need somebody much, much younger.
The issue of age, I think, is important in politics because age equates to experience. It equates to the opportunity to have seen where the damage has been done and gives you the advantage of going straight for repair work. So if I come into politics, as you say, at this late part of my life, my brain and my mind is not late or old. I think I have a very full grasp of what is happening around me. And I have the wherewithal to approach the problems from perspectives which I think would be beneficial to the majority of my followers, especially the people of Kwara State.
Oftentimes, for older people, especially those whom God has blessed with good health, I do know that oftentimes there is a conflict between their perceived capacity and, even their own physical strength. I know that the president constantly is always wishing that he were younger. He wished he had taken on the problems of Nigeria, at an earlier time in his life. When you look at the problems, or when you look at the challenges that are, confronting the people of Kwara, do you think it's something that you will have the physical? Because whether or not we like it, much as, mentally we might still be very capable and, have excellent cognitive abilities, sometimes physical strength is not exactly the same thing. And this kind of work could actually take their toll.
Margaret, do I look like a frail person who cannot take part in physical activities? You see me walk into this studio, you see me sit down here. Will that be, in your own judgment, an impediment to my ambition? I think I'm going to work with my brains, not with my legs.
Very true. But what I'm saying, I mean, oftentimes people always expect that older people will take it easy. I have a father, he's much older, and there are things that, you simply say, take it easy, you're retired now. Why do you want to, go through all of the stress?
In old age, if you sit down in one corner, the world will get worse and worse, and you watch without being of any help to anybody. So if you have a chance, like I do have a chance, and a commitment to fixing things in my environment, I think it's going to be a disservice to the nation to deny that nation or that state of the things that I think I have that's worthwhile.
What do you think? I mean, because some people also argue that it is only recently that there has been an argument as to, whether Kwara has changed trajectory or it hasn't changed trajectory. We know the politics of Kwara and, how the now governor got into a position. He's running for a second term and is hoping to clinch it this time around. There are questions as to what precisely would you say that he's doing wrong? Because some people will say, oh, he seems to be getting some things right. What are you going to be arguing that he's doing wrong that you think will make a chance for you?
Well, those who feel it know it. I'm a Kwaran. I've lived in Kwara continuously without any considerable absence for at least 13 years straight. And I've been witnesses to governments and governors coming into authority in Kwara State. I'm not going to focus on any one particular one. I just want to look at the general mess that Kwara State has been thrown into by ineptitude, incompetence, and indeed corruption. So if I have a governor who is there now, by the means which you have just hinted at, I think it's only fair for me to do a second round of fight. We had primaries in 2018 when we were in APC, and the whole world knows the winner of the primary. But that's not the issue that I'm about now. It's whether the person who has actually got the ticket or has been given the ticket is actually living up to his bill. The generation of opinion in Kwara State is that we are not any better than we were 6, 7 years ago. In fact, if not worse. So if things are getting worse and people like me are around, and we had the opportunity to get into the action and make corrective measures, I think we are just in the right place. So to say whether the current governor is doing well or not doing well is left to the judgment of the people. But the preponderance of opinion is that Kwara is sinking under a dead body, unprecedented dead body, which I think is very unhealthy for us. I mean, there's nothing wrong with states taking loans But unless you put such loans into productive enterprises, into instruments of growth and welfare for the people, you would have been doing all those things in vain. And that's the problem that we face in Kwara State, the misapplication of our resources.
I see that you have in your mission and vision, you talk about strategic action for change in Kwara.
Yeah.
You largely focusing on the local governments. Quite a long list of what you want to achieve there, one of which is financial autonomy for local government. You think you can? How do you plan to approach that, given the fact that we've seen cases and judgments and
I just want people to know ab initially that I'm not like the traditional politicians who wants to do everything in this period of 4 years. I think I'm sufficiently enlightened to know my capabilities and the kind of environment which I want to have. I'm not pretending to want to rule Nigeria. I'm only focusing on Kwara State, which I know very well. And I know the ailments of Kwara State, which I think we need to change. And when I say SAC, strategic action for changing Kwara, you see that I've listed among it. The first of them is education, education, and education. I've always said that people say it is expensive. Education is expensive. And I tell them, okay, try ignorance and see which one is more expensive. And that's the result of what we're having partially at the highest level in Kwara today. If you don't have education, what do you have? You cannot give. So I place a lot of premium on education, being myself a trained educationist, a trained teacher, and I know the value of education in determining many things in society. If you have a good education plan, you're prepared to have a literate, very well-educated state of young people, and with good education, you fight poverty, you fight disease, you fight ignorance, you fight even violence and extremism, because it is ignorance that nurtures all of these evils. So if you begin by fixing the education sector, you would have gone a long way to preparing the future for the children. Look at, for instance, the number of out-of-school children that we have across the nation. In Kwara State, we have quite a substantial part of it. And if we use the investment or the resources of government to bring people up, we are only preparing them for the future, preparing the state for competition in the next century. So education is one of the entry points and the flagship of my administration. By the grace of God, I become governor. Well, but education will only lead to some other things. If you have education, you'll be able to appreciate that the source of the wealth of the people lies in agriculture mainly. And an educated agriculture community, farming community, either at the subsistence or industrial level, becomes better people. They produce what you call food sufficiency for the people if they are properly educated about what they are supposed to do. And if you have a very educated community, you'll be free from disease, the kind of things that kill children all the time. You'll focus on primary health care, and you'll be able to care for the aged as well.
So this education policy of yours, would that be like a long-term goal? Because, I mean, you have to be 4 years if anyone is elected, first instance.
Yeah, education will have to be a long-term plan, but you must have achievable deliverables within short periods. And I'm not talking about wanting to rule Kwara for 30 years. I'm looking at a short period of 4 years in which we inject new directions into the way we do things.
All right, let's go to Lagos. Kaide Abuki.
Well, thanks, Chamberlain. Prof, you know, talking about age reminded me of former President Olusegun Obasanjo and how recently he's said to have scored a hat trick. It seems like he's, you know, going on and on with that strength. But I'd like you to respond to this point, which has been made severally, that with age also comes that tendency to always want to do things in a certain way. People set in their ways, people who are used to things being done in a certain way. And it's very difficult because, I mean, habits take a long time to be formed and even perhaps longer to be weaned off. So the question is this: how is it easy for you to balance that? Because I remember one of the presidential candidates saying one of the major problems of Nigeria is that we have analog leaders in a digital world for digital people. And we've seen that young people usually champion innovations and all of that. And it's been said that perhaps, the older ones should play advisory roles and allow the younger ones to be at the forefront of innovations and, transforming society. So are you that kind of person that, in spite of his age, isn't analog?
Thank you very much. I think we have a problem in Nigeria. There's this current phobia about age. And I think it's because we're indiscriminate, sufficiently indiscriminate about how we apply our thinking. That you have age on your side must be a plus for the nation and for the state. Well, we have been experiencing quite some hiccups in terms of disappointment by persons of age who have taken, who have taken a shot at the national level. I don't think we will be an exception. It is not only Nigeria that will have old people who are in charge of, who are taking a shot at governance. If you look at Europe and America, there are quite a number of old people who have been doing it. And I think what is important is the mental health. The physical health is also important. And I think whoever is unwell mentally or physically owes the nation a duty to just simply lay by and let younger people do it. But the thing is, younger people can also perform worse than older people. And let me tell you, if you look at the history of Nigeria, all those who have brought Nigeria to what we are now, at the time they were contested were actually young people who have become old now. So I think the idea of this hammering on age and the youth is, I think we need to rethink the way we think about our future. Nigeria has been brought to where it is today by young people. I'm not saying that young people have any fault, but I think you can find it. And where you can build, I think it's only on experience. If you have people with experience who have the capacity mentally and the physical wherewithal to be able to do it, after all, you're not going to go to a race course to do 100 meters dash. You only need to do that with the mental capacity that's available to you and the kind of exposure. And it's only people who have exposure that can actually fix the kind of problems that we have in Nigeria. If they are handicapped by health challenges, I think they owe it a duty to Nigeria to step aside. But I think we cannot apply it as a blanket thing that all old people should actually go and lay by and do nothing about what is going on. I think I am not the kind of old person that will actually stand by and see corruption eat completely the fabric of our society. And if I have an opportunity to lead, especially an anti-corruption crusade in Kwara State, I would have contributed something that is significant for people to remember and to build upon.
Professor Shuaibu, you pride yourself as an educationist, and of course you are a former vice chancellor. So I'm concerned about development this morning as far as the tertiary education is concerned. We've had more than a dozen strikes between the 90s and now, and last year was not an exception where students lost more than 8 months to the strike. What do you identify to be the problem of funding in the tertiary education sector? What recommendations would you be offering?
I believe that the problem is not in funding per se. It is the application of available funds. If you put people of character in charge of these things, you'll get things delivered. I recall in my days as vice chancellor, we didn't have what you call TED fund today. We had what we call ETF, Education Trust Fund. It is a funding arm of government to support education. But what ETF did at the time, if you have a project worth 100 million, ETF requires that you put on the table 40% of that, then the support with 60%. And that is the way you look at persons who have capacity to build. Most of what we got at the University of Illinois at the time were from IGR. We're not dependent on government. But I'm not saying that what we have now is wrong. ASU fought and won the battle to establish TED Fund. I was part of those negotiations. But the application and the persons who are supposed to drive the goals of TED Fund have not done well. Government has put a lot of money into TED Fund, but those who are going to expend these funds must be the kinds of persons you check and see whether they are applying it very well or not. So funding of education, I think, is important, but actually management of what is available in terms of funding is also the responsibility of those who are put in charge of the universities. Yes, we've had strikes and the rest of them, but the strikes have actually, by my private thinking and understanding, been misguided in some ways. I think if the university lecturers focused on their welfare, that would be defendable. But if they begin now to talk about government funding, I think that's going into the other territory. Yes, it is important to encourage government to spend money wisely. It's important to tap from the resources of the academic community to do wise implementation of policies. But I think it's not something that is sufficient for us to go on strike. I love to look at, for instance, if every professional decides to go on strike because there are no tools to work, Nigeria would have been grounded. I've not seen where doctors have gone on strike because there are not enough beds for patients in the hospital. Or engineers go on strike because the instruments for the construction are not available. Everybody goes along and tags along to make the best use of what is available. Nigeria cannot provide everything in terms of funding. But my vision and my view about this incessant strikes is we found ourselves in a kagwama, as I might say, boxed into a corner, both government and the unions, and it's time to come to a round table. And the way out, like I said at an earlier program, a national program, was to think of what we can call debt forgiveness. There's accumulation of debt, which the government is supposed to have owed to the academic staff community. And if Nigeria can get debt forgiveness under Okonjo-Iweala, I cannot see why we cannot reach a truce by saying, okay, what is past is past, but from now you must sin no more. And I think we have an equitable approach to solving that kind of question. But if everybody dug into his own hole and say no surrender, no vanquish, it's only the children who are going to suffer.
Well, it does look like my colleague has opened the floodgates there with a question on ASUS strike and or whatnot. I'm just wondering, how seriously are you taking the polls conducted by ANAP? Because it doesn't seem to be showing you as one of the front runners for the polls in Kwara State.
Anybody can give itself any name and post to society that it has the answer to everything. I live in Kwara. My people live in Kwara. We know what is on ground. So we are not going to go by anybody's progression or whatever. I don't know what company you call it, but I think they are all boys that have been brought up to find some means of livelihood by that kind of activity.
Well, Prof, we have to thank you for coming on. Professor Shuaibu is the governorship candidate of NNPP for Kwara State governorship seat. He's also former Vice Chancellor, University of Ilorin, and former Executive Chairman for the Federal Character Commission. And Prof, by the way, we love our senior citizens, so we wish you all the best.
Thank you very much. I'm not challenged by my age. I think the challenge is to perform. I must give credibility to old people.
Absolutely.